units versus houses. We're getting into strategy now. So I spent a lot of time on Corona, and I hope we get some questions about that. And I'd happily talk about it. But I'm going to crack on, and I'm going to talk about a couple of strategies here. All right. So a lot of people come to me and say, I'd like to buy a property, John, but I will not touch a unit. And that's because they think they're not getting land. And I get that. Houses are better than units. That's true. But there are some instances where units are extremely compelling buys. And you should be targeting, and this is a tricky little rule of thumb, you should be targeting suburbs where the median price of a house is 3 times the median price of a unit. And the reason for that is because you're trying to find essentially a spread or an arbitrage opportunity where you're finding something undervalued. And in these suburbs, a unit is undervalued and a house is overvalued. So we'll do a little test, and we'll have a look at when to buy a unit, when to buy a house. So, I've given you the answer already. If we look at Bondi, right? So in Bondi, the median price of a house is 2.7 million, and the median price of a unit is 1.1 million. So the ratio is 2.5 to 1. So a house is 2.5 times more expensive than a unit. Now, in that instance, it's not as compelling as something that's 3 times more than a unit, but it's a green question mark. So it's probably okay. It's close to 3x, and it would be something that you would certainly consider at that spread. If you look at Mossman, for example, so Mossman is a clearer example of the sort of place where you would be targeting units in Mossman. So median house is 3.5 million. The median price of a unit is just under 1.1 million. And the ratio of a house to a unit is nearly 3.3. So in that instance, you would be targeting units. And typically what you'll find is in the premium suburbs of Sydney, these ratios apply more. But Mossman's an area where you can get a unit for $1 million. Now, that's expensive, of course, but it's relatively cheap compared to the land that's underneath it, right? And a final example is Campbelltown. So in Campbelltown, where the median price of a house is $564,000 and the median price of units about $450,000, a house is only about 25% more expensive than a unit. So in Campbelltown, you wouldn't buy a unit, but you would buy a house. So you're trying to find out where the arbitrage opportunity is. So don't buy a house in Campbelltown, don't buy a unit in Campbelltown, buy a house, and so on. Now, lots of other examples. The cheapest suburb in Sydney for a unit is probably Vaucluse, where it's about 4.5 times. The house is about 4.5 times the price of a unit. Of course, Vaucluse is a very expensive suburb, but that's an extreme example of disparity between unit and house prices, where units are quite attractive as an investment. Lane Cove is another area where it's more like Bondi, but slightly more favourable, nearly 3x. They say there's a lot of supply in Lane Cove. Yes, there is, but they're relatively inexpensive compared to houses. So Lane Cove is another area to look at. Do your own research, obviously, but this is a really interesting rule of thumb. One of those patented John Comino secrets that are useful. So have a look at that one.